Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Coffee, where in today's episode, we take a look at details emerging on George Lucas's live-action Star Wars TV series. That's today here on Star Wars Coffee. So, George Lucas, after the prequels were being developed, decided that he would make a Star Wars live-action TV series. So, the original live-action TV series that we have now is The Mandalorian. But before then, back in 2004, George was developing a Star Wars TV series called Star Wars Underworld. And with an exclusive interview with Collider, Ronald D. Moore gave some insight into what this series would have consisted of. So, Ronald D. Moore has had an illustrious career in sci-fi and fantasy. He's worked as a writer and a producer on Deep Space Nine and Voyager, as well as Battlestar Galactica reboot. Currently, he's going to be talking about Star Wars Underworld with Collider's Troy Riemann. George Lucas officially began developing Star Wars Underworld back in 2004 as work on the prequels was winding down, and he assembled a team of writers to put together some scripts for the entire series before a frame of footage would be shot, and Moore was one of those writers. He says, "I was one of several writers. There was a bunch of international writers they assembled. We would gather up at Skywalker Ranch once every 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. And we would break series together, and right after we'd go off and write some drafts and bring them back, and George and we would sit down and critique them, and then do another draft and break more stories. It was great. It was a bill and it was a lot of fun. It didn't happen ultimately. We wrote, I would say, somewhere in between 40-something, 48 scripts, something like that. The theory was George wanted to write all the scripts and get them all done, and then he was going to go off and figure out how to produce them. And he wanted to do a lot of cutting-edge technological stuff with CGI and visual arts and so on. And so he had a whole new thing he wanted to accomplish. And what happened was, we wrote the scripts and then George said, okay, this is enough for now, and then I'll get back to you. I want to look into all the production things. And then time went by, and like a year or something after that, it was when he sold Lucasfilm to Disney. Normally, TV shows don't wait for 4 dozen scripts to be written before entering production, but George clearly had a specific vision in mind to create a truly massive series with the scope not restrained by typical limits on TV format. Ronald continues, "It was an extraordinary undertaking for someone to do. I don't know anyone else that would really take that time on. At the time, George just said, write them as big as you want and we'll figure it out later. So we really had no budget constraints in theory. We were all experienced television and feature writers. So we all kind of knew what was theoretically possible on a production budget. But we just went, for this pass, okay, let's just take him at his word just to make it crazy and big. But there was lots of action, lots of sets, and huge set pieces, just much bigger than what you would normally do in a television show. Details have slipped out over the years that the show was set between the events of Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and George Lucas himself said there would be a heavy film noir element to the story. Moore indicates that the massive number of episodes he and his fellow writers scripted would have all connected to one overarching storyline, saying, yeah, I think this was pretty much one big storyline. It was one long tale with episodic things that would happen. There would be certain events that would happen in this episode or this episode, so it was sort of an episodic quality to it. But it was telling a larger narrative, in terms of the story and those particular characters in that setting. Look for more with Ronald Moore in the coming days, according to Collider, teasing more about Star Wars Underworld. But I think that this is actually really cool, getting an inside look at Star Wars Underworld. I believe we did see some of that, test footage a little while back, and the whole idea of George Lucas doing his own Star Wars TV series is just incredibly cool. And it would be cool if Disney would let him take the reins in an episode of The Mandalorian or Cassian or Kenobi or anything like that. That would just be really cool to see, to let him get his full control over what he would do. I think Kenobi would make the most sense for that. But let me know what you guys think about this. Depth into Star Wars Underworld, George Lucas's unproduced live-action TV series, in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching. May God bless you, and the Force be with you always.